I'm sure that many of you can relate to the experience of finding chess.com puzzles very useful early on in learning basic tactics, traps, pins, forks, skewers, and so on. But as you get better and better and your puzzles rating increases, they seem to become more and more disconnected from what you'll actually find in your chess game. Which is why I'm making this video about Puzzlik, a tool that analyzes your games so that it can bring you personalized tactical puzzles that are actually relevant to the games that you play, rather than either generated puzzles that are often found on Lichess from other people's games, or these handmade puzzles on chess.com that often seem quite unrelated and study-ish rather than what's relevant to you. And I'm going to show you guys how you can use Puzzlik to really analyze your own games and fix your tactical holes. So we're going to start out more simple from these puzzle positions and then work to ones that are more complicated. In this one, we can see that the two bishops are lined up, and specifically this one is undefended. Using this understanding, we can look for ways to try and attack both of the bishops at the same time. And what better way to do this than the move queen to b6 hits both bishops? But the calculation shouldn't end there. What if pawn goes to a4? Then we can meet it with pawn to a6. The bishop has to move away, and the undefended bishop on b2 can be captured. Notice the thought process here. We see the two undefended pieces, and then you look for a way to attack them. Are there any forks? No. Are there skewers? Yes, and we find the move queen to b6 without too much difficulty. This puzzle here is all about move order. And in this particular game, my subscriber played knight takes on d8, allowing the black knight to take the white squared bishop and attack the queen as an in-between move. The mistake here was not eliminating black's most powerful piece in the most forcing way with bishop takes on f4, which would attack the queen and then allow the knight to capture one of the rooks, followed by capturing the loose bishop. As well as this, the bishop cannot block backwards because the knight is controlling that square and the bishop will take. So it's a mixture of concrete calculation as well as principles that you want to try and play the most forcing moves first. That is how you can solve puzzles effectively. Let's capture the knight, and then let's capture the most active rook. I think that makes sense. And then let's capture the bishop. As you can see, black is just down significant material here. He tries to give up a pawn, but we would just take that. White is completely winning. But it's not just openings and middle games that can do with work. As well as this, Puzzlik will pop up with some endgame puzzles. This one I thought was particularly interesting because it actually looks quite hard for black to make progress. For example, if black wants to start pushing pawns to try and make a passer, then white will come up and collect this d-pawn, and it looks very difficult to stop this. In the game, my subscriber played king f6, looking to meet the king here with king to e6. But the problem with that is that the king would actually run in and make it very difficult for black to make any progress, and in fact, this d5 pawn would be lost. And for that reason, the rather counterintuitive move here, king to g4, is actually very strong, because once the king steps up, which looks like our king is now so far away from being able to defend the pawn that what is even the point? Well, the point is that the king is actually counterattacking white's pawns with these weak e3 pawn here. And if white were to capture black's pawn, then black will start taking all of these pawns here and win the game. So let's just calculate concretely. Takes here, sorry, here, here. Oh my goodness, my arrows. Here, here, here. If takes, then takes. And if white starts trying to move in, then black can actually just mirror that and try and follow here. And if white ever ventures away to try and disrupt this pawn chain, this f4 pawn will just drop off the board, white captures, and the g pawn can run all the way down. It might be a little bit hard to visualize the whole way, but essentially you can use the concept that 2 pawns are better than 1, and the white king can never capture this pawn without this pawn running away and escaping. So that's why the solution is this. And after this move, we would have had a zugzwang with the move, trying to deselect stuff, with the move pawn to f6, which would leave white having to either move away, capture the pawn, or push the pawn, all of which are bad options. This puzzle, I think, was particularly interesting because, as was mentioned when I spoke with my subscriber during a lesson today, he said that pawn to g3 and pawn to g4 looked like a winning response because after pawn to g3 and the bishop goes to f6, pawn to g4 comes and then the knight is trapped. But what he missed during the game is that there was bishop takes on c3, attacking the queen such that you cannot take the knight in time, and then the knight will be able to retreat to the f6 square, where it is then pressuring 2 pawns, and black would even have an advantage. So for that reason, it's in these kind of positions where you want to notice, you want to make your observations first before rushing into a decision. In this position, I make the observation that these 2 rooks for black are very passive while ours are already activated. Additionally, the 2 pieces, minor pieces for black, are on the side of the board and can easily have pressure applied to them even if they can't be won immediately. As well as that, moves like knight to d5 look tempting, though concretely black can capture this pawn in the center, so it might be a little bit iffy. This would require some investment in actually calculating move for move. But in general, when you're playing a short time control like a rapid game, you might just want to play improving moves like rook d to f1, rook to h3, and apply more pressure before a more obvious tactic comes up. And that's something that I really like actually about this puzzle solving tool, is that it allows you, it provides you with puzzles that aren't necessarily just 1-2 move forks, pins, skewers, tactic stuff. It allows you positions which are where you're just building your advantage, right? Incremental moves like rook to h3 here, which actually had a lot of depth in it. And for that reason, we actually can go and analyze the position using like the Lichess analysis tool here. Why is rook to h3 a good move? It seems like the obvious response is g6, because that can be met with pawn to g3, and then the bishop can move out of the way and the knight will be defended. That is the threat of rook to h3. But if the pawn goes to g6, then what is at risk of happening here? Well, now pawn to g4 looks like a pretty big threat because the knight has to move. The knight either has to go to g7 or f6. If the knight goes to f6, the bishop on h4 will drop off. And if the knight goes to g7, then we can possibly play the move knight to d5. And now, even though the e4 pawn is hanging, which is something you pointed out earlier, the rook can capture on h4 because the queen is not able to defend through the pawn. So let's take a look at here and here. What if the queen goes back? Well, maybe we have pawn to g5 and the bishop has no retreat back, and there's no way to defend the bishop because the knight cannot access the f5 square. And you might say, well, this doesn't look like your kind of obvious 1-2 move forks, pins, skewers. Well, that's exactly the point, guys. In real chess games, you don't really just see strong players blundering in 1-2 moves with these very obvious tactical ideas. Each tactic is frequently very unique. And I think that that's why it's important to try and get tactics from and just analyze these positions from your own games in a lot of depth so that you can really improve your practical understanding. So if you did make it this far in and enjoyed the video, then please do consider liking and subscribing. And as well as that, I do have a 15% off code to Puzzlik. If you're interested by it, I'll leave that in the description. And other than that, I'll hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.